We have discussed before the state of the country's coffers and the measures the finance minister might be announcing soon to slash and save where he can. There's a medium-term budget policy statement expected on the 1st of November. Among Treasury stable proposals are suggestions to close various departments, key government programs, slash costs, reduce the public service headcount, but also a proposal to increase VAT by as much as 2%. It would be an assured way to secure more tax revenue, but at whose expense? Surely it will once again be the food insecure, those most vulnerable, our impoverished communities who are left with even less sustenance. If they're going to be paying more money for the most basic of goods. Mervyn Abrams, director of the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. We do realize South Africa is in a fiscal constraint. These, of course, the frivolous things that we're cutting on, and also directors for government departments to even freeze posts. But we need to find money when it comes to supporting and sustaining the most vulnerable. There's a suggestion of an almost 2% VAT increase. Your initial response to this suggestion, which would almost guarantee the impact, guarantee an impact on food prices, particularly for the most vulnerable, Mervyn?
So good morning, Les, and good morning to all your listeners. Yes, VAT increases tend to disproportionately impact negatively on the lower income section of the population, and has less impact for those who earn over 40,000 rand per month. So any increase in value-added tax is bound to increase food prices, and it's bound to have a very negative impact on food security for low-income households, because low-income households spend disproportionately almost about 50 to 60% of their income on food alone. So that will hit that particular section of the population much harder. And in fact, it will be once again the poor subsidizing the rest of South Africa.
In February 2018, we had, for the first time in almost 2 decades, it was then Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba announcing in February 2018 VAT would rise from 14% to 15%. The first time in that period that we saw a VAT increase in almost 2 decades. Well, if this proposal goes ahead, it would mean that we'd have another VAT increase by as much as 2% within 5 years. What does this tell us about the state of the South African economy?
Yes, what it tells us is that the South African economy is extremely sick. We can understand that there's a revenue squeeze, that SARS are not collecting as much taxes as they had projected. But that is all to do with the fact that we have allowed our manufacturing sector to deplete. We have listened to voices in the 2000s that advocated that South Africa should go globalized, that we should, instead of employing people back home, it is cheaper to import it because wages are cheaper in Bangladesh, wages are cheaper in China. Let's bring in all of those. And it's now those very same people who had advocated government to run down our industry and hence our jobs that are now complaining about fiscal cliffs. So it's really the chicken coming home to roost in terms of bad economic policies that did not prioritize our national security, but actually prioritize the financial sector in South Africa that has continued to make money. And now the poor is going to have to suffer the consequences if this 2% VAT increase comes through. But Lester, just one other point. Often governments say to us that, the VAT increase won't impact the poor because certain foods are VAT exempted. And that is true. A number of foods are in fact VAT exempted. Let me give you some figures. So over the last year, the foods that were VAT VAT exempted in our bars had increased by 8.8%. And the foods that are not VAT exempted, where we pay VAT on, has actually increased over the last year by 5.9%. So what this indicates is that even though you take VAT off certain foods, that does not make that food affordable at all, because the VAT is just included in other forms of the pricing.
Would there need to be a concrete proposal, like a concrete assurance from the finance minister that if this proposal of a VAT increase it comes, and you've raised the issues around how even VAT exempt products continue to rise, that there should be a stronger assurance that particularly the staples that people require, the staple in terms of vegetables, affordable protein, that remains affordable and that continues to be zero rated.
Lester, actually, the way the food system operates and the way the retail sector operates is that they might give a discount on one thing, but then, of course, double the increase on another food that you actually need in order to cook a pot of food. So, for instance, if that is exempted of chicken, then it's likely that, potato prices increase because you always use these two things together. So, really, the only way in which the poor can be protected against the VAT increase is actually to take VAT off all foods. And another intervention that could be useful is also to take VAT off all agricultural inputs, which raises prices later on. If that is considered, then we might be able to have a conversation with government.
Mervyn Abrams, Director of the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group.